All right, let's jump right into this. Picture this for a second. A city where on just a totally normal, ordinary morning, people walk out their front doors and they never come back. The streets just fall dead silent. The only thing you can hear is the heavy thud of soldiers' boots and this really ominous sound of the earth being violently dug up. Today, we're diving deep into a truly gripping historical and religious narrative drawn straight from Islamic traditions, specifically the Tafsir ibn Kathir. We're looking at a story packed with absolute power, unyielding faith, and a literally spectacular divine reversal. So who exactly were the people of the ditch, and what led to this fiery fate? Well, that is the central mystery we're unpacking today. The source text sets this terrifying scene. It's nighttime, and massive fires are suddenly lit simultaneously in 10 different spots across the city. I mean, flames reaching up to the sky, smoke just completely swallowing the streets. And at the center of it all, a tyrannical king who issues a horrifying decree. He basically says, "Worship me or be thrown alive into these burning trenches." To wrap our heads around how an entire city ended up engulfed in smoke and why on earth a king would incinerate his own people, we've got to rewind the clock a bit. Section 1. The City of Fire, an ancient kingdom in Yemen. Historical accounts tell us the ruler of this region had the whole shebang: absolute power, unimaginable wealth, massive armies. But, in his immense arrogance, just having people obey him wasn't enough. No. He demanded to be literally worshipped as a god. Section 2. Magician, Monk, and Boy. The battle for a young mind. See, to keep this intense psychological grip on his people, the king leaned heavily on an aging magician. But this magician knew his days were numbered, right? So he demands a brilliant young apprentice to make sure the king's dark illusions wouldn't just die out with him.
And so begins this really intense ideological tug-of-war for this young apprentice's mind. Day in and day out, he's learning these dark illusions from the magician, basically getting a masterclass in earthly power and deception. But then, fate steps in. He happens to cross paths with an elderly monk who's actively hiding from the king's forces. And this monk is preaching a completely different message. He speaks of a single unseen divine creator, Allah, who actually runs the entire universe. The boy was just totally captivated by this. He starts secretly studying with the monk, effectively putting the truth of an unseen God right up against the king's massive ego and claims of divinity.
Section 3. Miracles and the Beast, the turning point of faith. Now, a person's mind can really only hold two completely opposing truths for so long. For this boy, the breaking point hits hard when a terrifying massive beast completely blocks the main road into the city. It forces him into a corner. He has to test which of his two mentors is actually teaching the truth.
And the absolute turning point is right here in his prayer. He picks up just a single ordinary stone, looks up and says, "O Allah, if the monk is on truth, strike this beast down." He throws the stone and bam! In an instant, this massive, terrifying beast just drops dead right there on the ground. The crowd is absolutely stunned. The boy himself is shaking. I mean, he knows for a fact this wasn't the king's magic because the magician wasn't even there. At this exact moment, his faith is totally cemented. He knows, without a doubt, the monk was right all along.
The source material defines what happens next as a series of literal miracles. Extraordinary events that completely defy nature, attributed here to divine intervention. Because the boy doesn't just keep this huge revelation to himself, word spreads like wildfire, and pretty soon the blind and the sick are flocking to him. Through his prayers to Allah, the boy starts facilitating these miraculous healings. Naturally, this catches the eye of a powerful, blind courtier from the king's own inner circle. This guy brings lavish gifts, practically begging the boy to heal his sight, but the boy turns the gifts away. He lays it out plainly, saying, "I do nothing. It is my Lord who heals." The courtier embraces the boy's faith right then and there. The boy prays, and just like that, the courtier's sight is completely miraculously restored.
Moving into Section 4, the failed executions, a king's escalating wrath. As you might guess, absolute power-hungry rulers do not handle defiance very well. When the king finds out his own high-ranking courtier is now worshipping the boy's lord, he completely loses it. His wrath is fully unleashed. The monk is brutally executed, and the boy is violently dragged right before the furious king.
What happens next brilliantly illustrates just how desperate the king is getting. He wants to execute the boy, sure, but he wants it to be a massive public spectacle. So, first attempt, he orders his guards to drag the boy up to the absolute highest mountain peak and throw him off. But right at the summit, the boy simply prays for protection.
The text says the mountain physically shakes, the guards plummet to their own deaths, and the boy survives without a scratch. Completely enraged, the king tries a second time. This time, he sends the boy out on a boat into the treacherous deep sea to be drowned. Once again, the boy prays. A massive wave rises up, capsizes the boat, drowns the guards, and yep, the boy is miraculously saved yet again. Imagine this scene. The heavy, ornate doors of the royal court swing open. The king is sitting there, fully expected to hear news of the boy's watery death. But instead, the boy just casually strolls right back into the throne room, completely unharmed, completely alone. The mountain couldn't do it, the sea couldn't do it. The king is just glued to his throne, utterly paralyzed by shock. It's hitting him right then and there that all his massive earthly power is completely 100% useless against this one child. Which brings us to Section 5, Martyrdom and Uprising, the boy's final condition. Standing there, the boy looks right at the terrified king and issues just a stunning ultimatum. He willingly offers up his own life, but on one very specific condition, all to shatter the king's illusion of divinity, once and for all.
The boy lays out what is honestly a brilliant strategic trap. Step 1. Gather every single person in the city into a giant open field. Step 2. Tie me to the trunk of a tree. And step 3, and this is absolutely the most critical part, the king himself must place an arrow in his bow and shout at the absolute top of his lungs, "In the name of the Lord of the boy." Driven by his own massive ego and desperation, the king blindly agrees to the whole shebang.
So the king follows the instructions to the letter. He gathers the entire city, he draws the bow, and he publicly invokes the name of the boy's god just like he was told. He fires. The arrow strikes the boy, and the young martyr falls. But the consequence of this was immediate, and it was the exact opposite of what the king wanted. The entire gathered crowd has just watched their supposedly all-powerful king admit out loud that he needed the boy's lord to actually strike the final blow. They realized the truth right then. The king's magic was a total lie. Instantly, the massive crowd erupts, chanting, "We believe in the Lord of the boy." In a single unbelievable moment, the king executed one enemy, but accidentally converted his entire kingdom.
Section 6. The final retribution. The fires turn back. As you can imagine, the king's face just turns white with rage. He is now staring down an entire kingdom of believers. In response, he issues a truly chilling order of mass extermination. He commands his soldiers to dig massive trenches, fill them to the brim with oil, and set the whole thing ablaze.
Religious texts heavily memorialize this dark moment in history, recording forever that, quote, "destroyed were the companions of the trench." The narrative really focuses on the profound, almost unbelievable bravery of the people here. It details this heartbreaking anecdote of a mother standing right at the edge of the inferno, clutching her infant child. And for a split second, human instinct kicks in, right? She hesitates. But miraculously, her infant actually speaks to her, saying, "Patience, mother, for you are upon the truth." Hearing that, she steps forward into the flames.
But the source text outlines a spectacular divine reversal that happens almost immediately. The fire was meant to be the ultimate punishment for the believers, right? But the narrative describes this sudden, violent shift in the natural world. The earth actually begins to tremble. A fierce, howling wind sweeps through the entire city. And suddenly the thick smoke and the towering flames actually change direction. They blow violently out of the trenches. In a matter of moments, this raging inferno surrounds and completely incinerates the king, his advisors, and his entire army of soldiers. The very trap they dug became their own fiery grave.
To wrap up our explainer today, I want to leave you with a final thought drawn straight from the reflections in the source material itself. The text points out that even today, our world is still filled with fires. Sometimes those are literal explosions, and sometimes it's the quiet, crushing tyranny of unjust laws and starvation. Tyrants still sit on thrones today, convinced they've escaped accountability just because they have massive armies and hordes of wealth. But this historical narrative serves as a stark reminder that ultimate power always rests elsewhere. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. In a world still burning with tyranny, who stands on the path of truth today? Thanks so much for exploring this fascinating historical narrative with me. Keep asking those big questions and keep seeking the truth.